What up,
Kobe?
What up, Wallstreet, bitch?
What's up, Hans?
Not much. It's good to be back.
I know, it's great to be back. It's great to be back.
Welcome to
the Baptize Machine. Okay.
Yeah.
Better than ever.
We are back and better than ever. So I don't want to spoil too much of today's episode with who we're going to interview.
Hashtag no spoilers.
And we are going to go back to our roots and be shooting the shit a little bit in the beginning. But we're going to be having this man on, Mike Ross. We've had Shannon Bray on.
Sexy.
Now twice. You remember him. So we asked AI to generate an image of Mike Ross for our intro today. He's running for Libertarian governor of North Carolina with Shannon Bray as his lieutenant governor. Thanks to our sponsor, Happy Dose, for helping fund this episode, keeping us going. So I thought I would play the intro where the AI had generated Mike Ross, Libertarian candidate for North Carolina. And I just want to remind everyone, look at what he looks like on his website versus what he looks like in our intro. So if you ever want us to generate images for you, it is a service we offer.
Yeah, you can just email us. Ooh! Can they see this?
Yeah, good point. I have to live
Ooh! I love this song.
Yeah, so that's a song by Grand Daniel. We want to thank him again for all of the music. He goes by Pickle Walks now, but either way.
Yeah, Pickle Walks, Grand
He also
Daniel.
does our outro song, which we will update soon. So yeah, again, those are the two images of Mike Ross side by side. There's Bernadette breathing heavily in the background.
All right.
What do you got, Pickle?
Let's kick it off Kobe beef style. Well, a couple things that I think we should talk about. First of all, the protests that are sweeping the nation are an extremely hot topic right now.
On the college campuses.
And it's really interesting to watch because you can view all of this through two directly opposite lenses, and it's interesting to hear people's perceptions of these things. On one side, these are extremist terrorists, and they're spreading these ideals through college campuses. And on the other side, it's the great old American tradition of protest. And it, as we've seen for the past 100 years in America, college kids standing up for what they believe in.
Yeah, and who are the terrorists? The Israelis or the Palestinians? That's the real question. Who are the terrorists?
Exactly. And
are we the terrorists as the Americans?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's one of these never-ending issues because there's strong talking points on both sides, you could say. Mm-hmm. So it's one of these never-ending arguments that the elite and the people in power absolutely love.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw online, it was going around that people were planted at Columbia University. How could they have locked their doors with these heavy chains and the doors to the building with these heavy chains?
They use.
No, but then if you look at pictures of the lock, it's like the lock they sell they sell it in the bookstore at Columbia.
Yeah. I mean, but see, this is one of those situations where we don't know the facts. There's people saying that there's been real terrorists that are involved and have been involved in these riots, and people are saying that's bullshit. So it really depends on what news you listen to. What news you listen to is going to form your opinion. So anyway, we'll cut this. A perfect example of where we are at today in the world, like media and news-wise. Social media and the thousands of different news sources have created an environment where there is no truth, and you can pick any truth you want to believe. And is there a way out of this? I don't know. I really don't know.
Dude, I am so zoomed up right now. I just drank a beer that you had left on the counter by the pizza, and a Zin went into my mouth.
I put both Zins in the beer.
Oh, yeah. I'm feeling it. I had like a night
I'm
over
sorry.
it. Whew, I'm
I'm
having
sorry.
a really good sip.
That's topic.
But on that note, I'm
We're
gonna
gonna put more.
I think I'm gonna finish the beer at the Zen too. Like, why not? You know,
Yeah, do
that's
it.
what you
Like it.
hobbies
Like it.
otherwise. Yeah. So on that note, Zen, sponsor us. What else could we talk about before
I
the
think
legend Mike Ross comes on?
we should talk about the no spoiler pledge by candidate RFK Jr.
That sounds great.
So this is actually really fascinating, and maybe we should play this clip, but I'll summarize it beforehand. Future President Kennedy
Future president.
has came out with something called the No Spoiler Pledge that says both parties agree to co-fund a 50-state poll in mid-October of 2024 of 30,000 plus likely voters. The survey will test the results of a head-to-head race pitting President Biden against President Trump, and second head-to-head race pitting Mr. Kennedy against President Trump. Both parties pledge that whoever performs weakest against the president or against President Trump in this two-man contest will drop out of the race. So, if Biden does not take this challenge, it basically means that he's an egotistical fuck who only cares about himself winning. Because if he really cared about the country and cared about stopping President Trump, he would take this because there's no lose. Like if Kennedy wins, he's like, okay, good. Like this guy can beat Trump. And no response from the Biden campaign. But I think this is the most interesting, I guess, thing that a potential presidential candidate has ever put on the table before.
Yeah, it's also interesting on his website. He has it like I question slightly how accurate this data is because
it's one poll,
yeah,
so
yeah. He has it in a head-to-head against Biden though. He's up by like almost 200 electoral votes. It seems high.
Dude, polls for a couple months have been showing that with people 35 and under, Kennedy just destroys.
But then, I mean, with Trump and him, it is a very close race still.
Yeah.
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 Interesting. So he's depending on to win Maine and Vermont, which.
But his claim is that a vote for Biden is a vote for Trump.
Sorry, Maine and Virginia. I was like, Vermont's definitely going to be liberal. Yeah.
You know, people say a vote for Kennedy is a vote for Trump. It's actually a vote for Biden. So we'll see how Biden responds. I don't think he'd put this stuff out if it wasn't pretty damn accurate.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
We could watch his video really quick, and then I might have something.
Yeah, let's watch it.
Yeah. So this is the video. One of our sponsors, Looney Raccoony, has shared with us. I make the pop-out window. It does not work in Riverside. By the way, Riverside FM, we will be discussing your background soon.
This is the no spoiler pledge.
So right off the bat for me, and I know his history, so it doesn't bother me, but people are just going to be turned off by his voice, which I think.
Or people will connect with his voice because it's a disability.
Maybe it is 2024.
Which we're announcing today. This is a pledge that I offer to take if President Biden also takes it. Both parties agree to co-fund.
He sounds like he's stage 4 lung
in
cancer.
mid-October.
Yeah, so this is like what you just read, right? Pretty much?
Yeah, but he explains it better.
Okay.
A 50-state poll with 30,000 or more likely voters. So this is essentially, effectively, zero margin of error in October of 2024. The survey will test the results of a head-to-head race, pitting President Biden against President Trump, and a second head-to-head race, pitting me against President Trump. Both parties, whoever performs weakest against President Trump in a two-man contest, will drop out of the presidential race.
That seems fair to me.
And it should be a win-win. If the Democratic Party or Democratic and Independent Party want to come together as an anyone but Trump type of force, if Trump is the end of democracy and the end of the world, like they say he is,
Or is he just
this is a no-brainer.
Or is he just someone who has mean tweets?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's find out. Exactly. Let's find out who can actually beat him.
This
Because
is
we
a
don't-
spoiler pledge.
No,
And
continue.
by the way, I'm happy to make this same pledge, although President Trump is not a spoiler because he can actually win. But I'm happy to make this same pledge with President Trump because I can do better against President Biden than President Trump can. Oh, people who are frightened, who are voting for President Trump because they're frightened of President Biden should be supporting me. And vice versa. And ultimately, I think what we all want in this election is that for Americans not to feel that they have to vote out of fear, that they
That's
feel that they
true.
can vote out of hope.
But
Exactly.
isn't this just like a third choice of fear? How's it different? Because I don't know if he's like very wanted, you know?
Yeah, he's 100% wanted. What issues do you feel strongly about? I guarantee you he agrees with them.
I feel strongly about women having the right to abortion everywhere.
And he agrees with Roe v. Wade. So, like,
So does Biden, though.
okay. But I'm saying RFK probably lines up with you better. RFK's actual policies are the most construed and distorted out there. You can find his policies on his website, and they're very clear. There's no conspiracy theories, and they're actually extremely democratic. So anyway, I just thought this was a very interesting, like, we've never seen something like this before. And I think Biden should take it.
So I guess my biggest issue with him would be
If you the whole thing about guns,
I think it would.
you're going to be just wrong with whatever you say because you're going off of what other people say, not what he says. And the fact that you have to research it means that you shouldn't have an opinion about him.
That's true. I don't have enough of an opinion. He's a better option than Trump or Biden. I really don't like either of them.
Look at the position we're in, spending
he would
hundreds
shake
of billions
things
of
up.
dollars in different wars right now. Like, they try to position this like this is the only option. Like, if we don't support this, the world will collapse. Like, fuck. Maybe it should. Like, because we can't afford it.
We can't.
You know?
Yeah. Let's listen more.
Hope. And that is only going to happen if there's a two-way race between me and President Trump or me and President Biden. The other thing is, if you picture what this country is going to look like in November, if either President Trump or President Biden won, the division is going to continue, the anger, the vitriol, the chaos, the polarization is going to worsen.
The crazy thing is the media doesn't pick this up.
Only way to end that.
That is true. And the fact that you said you saw it on TikTok way more this morning, but then
CNN, Fox, no one's talking about this.
Yeah,
Our parents don't know about this.
Yeah, we couldn't even find the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that's why young people have to come out.
Yeah.
The young vote is for Kennedy. And I know people think he's a wacky conspiracy theorist, but like 99% of the clips that are played showing him to be a conspiracy theorist are taken out of context, like they did to Trump, like they did to whoever they want to fuck over, you know? So, yeah, he's had some weird beliefs in the past, and he has addressed those, and he said that he's grown past them. Like,
yeah, I guess like the similarity for
Biden was against gay marriage 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's true. He also is like responsible for the mass incarceration of people of color for like nonviolent drug offenses, him and Kamala Harris together. So
Yeah.
I see.
He'll also like
It's good for people
try
to
to
change their minds.
knock on your wall to get into your house. He doesn't know where the door is.
I feel like Kennedy acknowledges when he changes his mind. Yeah, Biden thought there was a bridge on that, or sorry, a train on the bridge that blew up. He said he rode it more.
Yeah.
Like, and it's one thing to be like, oh, I've been on the train on that bridge, but he's like, I used to commute on that train. So that's like he's like making up a whole story about it, not just like of mismemory. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's like why I'm for euthanasia of the presidents. Like we should allow our presidents to be euthanized after their presidency.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, my biggest like thing about Biden is that he is supposed to be the president that brings everyone together, and he talks so much dirty shit against the Republicans, which are 50% of the country. So you're just making the divide worse. He calls them like it's just as I mean I know Trump is very, very divisive, but I mean you watch the State of the Union. Watch the State of the Union.
What happened in it?
They view the whole Republican Party as like a fringe extreme group, and it's literally half the country, and they're normal people.
Huh?
What do you mean, huh? Like that's how.
Alright, well, let's get into this more with Mike Ross. For now, let's try to do a segment different from politics, where we might actually get off the topic of politics. So I wanted to talk about this system of huts that were built. It's slightly political, but not really, because that's the deal with like lands. You can get the fuck out of our podcast space. So what I wanted to talk about was these huts, the 10th Mountain Division huts. They were built during World War II, and they were built by.
Oh, is this where you went?
Yeah, so we skied 6 miles up a hill to go to these huts. And I posted.
They look nice.
Yeah, they're very nice. I posted a picture of a fox.
Did they have electricity?
Yeah, they had solar panels for electricity.
They're heated?
Yep. So no, they're heated with wood burning stoves.
So wait, you rented this hut out?
Yeah, we reserved it through recreation.
And you hiked it up? You hiked up 6 miles through the mountains?
Well, yeah, we skinned up, so we put like grip tape on the bottom of our skis and went up the hill.
That's nuts.
It's about 6 miles, about 3,000 feet. And right outside the hut was this fox.
That's beautiful.
But
that's such a beautiful fox.
I took multiple photos of this fox.
Wait, can you zoom in on the fox?
Let's see. I took multiple photos of this fox. I don't think we can zoom in. But it is domesticated as hell.
Really?
Yeah, it was chasing snowballs, running around.
Could you like what
Here's a video.
Whoever looked over their shoulder and saw.
We were just blasting Eminem on a speaker, watching this fox.
Did you bring up whiskey or anything?
No, look how close it was. This was the bench on our deck out front.
Wow.
I think it's been fed though, so it will probably be killed soon. This is from the window.
What do you mean it'll probably be
inside the hut. Well, because it's way too friendly with people. That's his run. We skied and then did a ski back up. It was very exhausting.
So how many times did you do that run?
Once, and then some other people did it 2 more times.
And then were you able to ski down?
That's what the uphill looks like. Yeah, you just have to kind of zigzag up and down the mountain. Wow. Yeah, so pretty good stuff.
Where were you?
This was outside of Aspen, Colorado.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Now we're showing random people. Trying to get to these. This was the kitchen, so there's one of the wood burning stoves.
What'd you make for dinner?
Comes equipped with all these pots and pans. We made pasta one night, fajitas another night. Pretty
so you
good
just
times.
Hung out? You just sort of hung out here?
And we like kind of stretched together, you know.
Oh,
yeah, maybe the stretching video will play. We'll see. But If it does, it's pretty it could get pretty erotic. This video.
Take a video. Send it to Cassie.
Oh. Is that Jason?
Yeah.
So you had the whole hut to yourself?
Yep. There's 16 beds and there's only 5 of us, and
Was there a lock on the door?
no one else rented out a bed. It was pretty great. Here's
Oh, so
here's
I
the
could
other.
have been invited.
But you wouldn't be able to make up the hill. Here's
Yeah,
the other wood burning
I
stove.
just would have rented equipment.
We had charcuterie. I barely made it up.
I'm in better
You
shape.
boil
than you.
snow. You boil snow in this big pot. I had a 2-string guitar back here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And then there's a whole upstairs with beds, and there's bunk beds and a room downstairs. I'm trying to get to these wood chopping videos though, because I thought a good segment of the podcast would be to
Rate wood
rate
chopping.
some wood chopping. Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's rate this wood chop.
This is. We'll explain to just our listeners what's happening. He's blaming the axe.
That looks extremely dangerous.
Yeah, especially at high. We're at like 11,000 feet. Let's see another video. This one's a little bit longer. Hell yeah, brother! Dialed. That was a little better. We're trying to make kindling. Do you go kindling or
Yeah, kindling.
kindling?
That's good.
Kindlingus?
Yeah, kindling.
Kindlungus. Here's a good one. This is from another angle. He's really just failing to chop the wood here.
Yeah.
Like putting his finger closer and closer to the head of the
I'll
axe.
give this like a 3.
Yeah, I would give out of 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say out of 5, that would be very high. Yeah, so that was that trip. Pretty fun. Skied like 3 laps. Probably skied for 3 hours in 2 days and went uphill for. We went uphill for probably 15 hours over 3 days. And I skied downhill for maybe 3 to 4 hours. Yeah, very tiring.
Fine. Must have to be in good shape for that.
You would love it. You're the fittest guy I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be able to do it. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I barely did. I'd have my stronger.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Shout out to Marlon. Thanks, Marlon. Are we ready for Mike Ross? What questions do
I'm
you
ready for
ask?
Mike Ross.
He should make a pledge like that in North Carolina. That's what we should ask him about.
I want to hear his opinion on all the crazy shit we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
We do. We have enough.
Yeah, if we could FedEx it to, or I guess UPS is better here,
Yeah,
but
it's-
if we could send that out to.
It'd be more fun to come to Denver, honestly.
Yeah. Well, if you
It'd be a
ever
long trip
visit,
for some pizza.
if you ever visit, we'd love to have you in person. So.
Yeah, it's been a few
Yeah.
years, but my wife and I would love to get back out there. We haven't been out there since we had a kid, so that
how old
kind of
is your
changed his
kid?
life, man. He's 12.
Nice. Well, I'm Hans. This is the Wallstreet bitch.
The Wall Street,
yeah.
Wall Street bitch and Hans. Okay.
Yeah, or WSB too, if you don't want it. He goes by the WSB. He's
I mean,
considered a name
look,
change.
I'm on your podcast. If that's what you go by, I'm just honoring the wishes of my guests.
Yeah,
I'm not
there
afraid.
you go.
I'm not afraid to say words.
We came up with the names years ago just on the spot, and we just decided to stick with them, even though they're stupid, to be honest. But yeah.
But Anyway, we've had Shannon Bray on a couple times. So we heard you kicked his ass in the Libertarian governor election, but then you decided to make an alliance. I'm like using the words "kick his ass" too. And then you decided to make an alliance with him running as your lieutenant governor, kind of on a try to do the same ticket thing.
Wait,
Could you explain?
Let's start
that?
from here, because we are recording. Do you want to introduce yourself, and then
That's a good point.
because our listeners do know Shannon Bray, just sort of explain your relationship or journey with him?
Yeah. So my name is Mike Ross. I'm the Libertarian candidate for governor of the state of North Carolina. I'm 41 years old. I'm a recently semi-retired former small business owner. I'm a homeschool dad. I'll probably go back to work. I'm just with winning the primary and owning my own business. I had the flexibility to kind of shut it down and start up something else when I want to. But yeah, that decision came about after I beat Shannon in the primary. I don't want to say I kicked his ass because I mean, at the end of the day, I think we had two libertarian candidates, and the people of North Carolina looked at the messaging, looked at the platforms, and chose who they thought was the best, better voice. And I think at the end of the day, Shannon's a great voice, and the way it worked out, I think Shannon mentioned it when he was on your podcast, right? We kind of had this agreement of, hey, we like each other. We want to run a clean political campaign because that's rare nowadays.
Yeah.
So let's kind of get out there, talk about the issues that really matter to people. And after the voters decide who they want to run for governor, there was this thing that we kind of saw as like a little loophole that we wanted to challenge in the way the state set things up. So we were, because they normally have kind of like this spoiler rule where like if you lose a primary, you can't be like slotted back in kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the verbiage on it didn't make it seem like you could do that in another one. So we're like, hey, let's kind of let's go this route, and whoever loses the primary, we'll just kind of have the chair put them in as the lieutenant governor spot just to test that. And that's kind of how we got to where we are. So.
That's what people are dying for now, and they can sense it too. A fair, no bullshit issues campaign.
Yeah.
Which everyone pretends to have, but it sort of gets distorted as time goes on. So that's cool that you guys were able to stick to that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good race. It was interesting. We're both close to like the two major metro areas. So going into it, it was really kind of all speculation of how it was going to turn out. Shannon's run for office a few times before. I've never run for anything. I never had any goal, desire, or thought I'd run for, even local office. And then here I am running for the head, top of the ticket, governor of the state of North Carolina, and what might end up being the highest dollar spend gubernatorial race in the country. They're estimating between 150 to 200 million dollars. And darn well, most of that is not coming from like actual people in the state of North Carolina. It's all these mega PACs, mega donors, which is scary, right? They're going to spend 150 to 200 million dollars to determine who rules over the people of our state. And they're doing everything they can to shut me out of the debate.
Yeah,
and
so that raises a kind of a hard question, I think, for libertarian candidates is like, would you ever be in favor of, some sort of campaign finance laws or regulation so you don't have these massive corporations coming in and funding candidates that the people don't actually want, but the corporation wants?
I mean, I don't know how old you guys are. I'm 41, right? Here's what I've realized in my 41 years of life, right? Is if power's available, people will cheat or rig the system in order to get it. Like that's going to happen. And there's very little that anybody can do to stop that. So my entire political philosophy really revolves around localization, decentralization, and nullification, right? Where if we can shift all of that power from the federal government down to the state and leave the federal government in charge of the stuff that only a federal government can do, right? Like defense, the military, stuff like that. But the big decisions that impact the regular people's lives, like, dude, if a state wants to be like really liberal or really conservative, like let them, if that's what their people want. Stop trying to force your stuff on there. And that way you can have pockets throughout the country. And then I'd take it even a step further. Like I'm in North Carolina in the Charlotte area. Why do some people in Raleigh really like need to determine most of the stuff that's happening to, people in my county? I feel like if our government was really working for the people, who we elect at mayor and like town or city council should matter like so much more than who's president, right? Like president should be handling a few things, and that way we'd have like real accountability, because it's so much easier for a third party or someone outside of this uniparty system to challenge it when it's local, right? But they've spent over 100 years designing, legislating, and rigging this game to really try and prevent anybody. It's not just libertarians that have this problem. Like the Greens have to do it. RFK's having to do it. Anybody who's ever came in from out of the system knows that they're playing a rigged game. So if you're playing a rigged game, you either have to kind of design a sub game, right? Like if you can't win according to their game, how can you win, right? Can we push the Republican and the Democrat on policy? Can we make enough noise as a protest boast that we sling it? There's so many different things there. Or the big one, which, I think is something that, I like to have a few whiskeys and think about, right? Is how do you change the game? If the game is rigged and they're playing it with 150 to 200 million, how do you find a way to make it so that money is not the be all determining factor for power? And it's something I think is possible, right? Like it happened in Argentina, right? There's a libertarian who's head of state there, didn't spend a penny on advertising. Like it happened. Now, granted, here in the US,
did it happen? Yeah.
We haven't had 100+% inflation every year for a decade.
Exactly.
That would sure help. Right. But
that wouldn't be good.
Yeah. Shit needs to get really, really bad for that amount of change to happen.
Right. So we just got to find a different way to change the game. Right. If we don't have that kind of headwind behind our sail, to make it where the whole population's like, well, you guys are just completely incompetent and ruined our once great country. But I think there's things that we can do, and we're getting a lot of really interesting steam that came out of it. Like
awesome.
Another third party, like have you guys heard of the Forward Party?
No.
Yeah.
So you remember in 2020, you remember who Andrew Yang is?
Yep. Yeah.
So Andrew Yang is the guy who started the Forward Party, which is designed to be this like outside of the uniparty thing as a third party, and they're fighting for ballot access in our state. But since they didn't have ballot access, they actually invited during primary season all of the candidates to come to a debate. And the front runners for the Republican and Democrats, Mark Robinson and Josh Stein, didn't show up. But their number twos, since their front runners wouldn't even debate their competitions in the Republican and Democrat, their number twos actually came to this debate.
Contextualize who Mark Robinson and Josh Stein are?
Yeah, so Mark Robinson is the current lieutenant governor of North Carolina. He's the Republican candidate. He's, I would argue, is basically a puppet of Donald Trump. Whether you like Trump, dislike Trump, whatever, he's Trump's handpicked guy. And then you have Josh Stein. He's the current attorney general of North Carolina. And he's basically Joe Biden's handpicked puppet, right? Like, so you have these, these are the guys that the federal level candidates fully support. They have their backing. And, that to me, that just says, if you're going along with what the Republican and Democrat majority in Washington, D.C. has, look, you're a rubber stamp. Whatever your party is trying to run through in D.C., you're not going to resist it. You're not going to say, hey, that's not good for the people of our state. You're going to go along to get along. So that's who Robinson and Stein are, right?
One of them's like pretty openly racist too, right?
So that's how the media paints it, right? Like, so Robinson, they paint him as like super racist. He's a black guy, right? He's the first black lieutenant governor of the state, and he's had some problematic statements, to say the least. My big issue is, some people call me a liberal. Some people call me a conservative. I argue I'm a radical libertarian. Like the whole left-right paradigm is something I don't buy into at all. Like I really don't buy into it. You can think what you want of me. But when I look at Mark Robinson, he's supposed to be good on 2A. He got his kickstart. He's from Greensboro, North Carolina, and he got his whole career launched off of a speech he did in front of Greensboro City Council on Second Amendment, right? And I listened to it. I'm a libertarian. I love the Second Amendment. Like but he has this great speech. And fast forward to last week, a local grassroots organization was fighting to push constitutional carry through North Carolina. He's supposedly the 2A guy from the Republicans who got the invite. He wasn't there. I was there, right? Like, so that's kind of where it is. He's off fundraising, and he says he's good on 2A, but he's not there, going to the offices of the state house saying pass the bill.
He's going to the super PAC donors in Washington, D.C. probably. That's why. Instead of the actual people he should be representing.
Well, I think that's what we're seeing now. People at the federal level and people like endorsed by them are slowly moving away from public consciousness and getting disconnected from how the people are actually feeling. And that's why I wish people get so riled up and pay so much attention to the presidential election. If people just really understood how the process worked, we could really make some serious change if we put that amount of passion and effort into our local elections. Start small and grow from there. And the amount, the level at which Biden and Trump are sort of just disconnected from the local issues is flabbergasting. Yet people are still waving their flags and like, you know, it's just bullshit. It's bullshit.
It is, man, and it's. I kind of hit a point. Like, I'm tired of pretending that it's not. Right, like that's the expectation on us. We're sitting here going through this. Like, is this really? We're a country of what, 350 million people? Are these two people truly the best as far as like you went through your whole thing? Is that who's the best leader that we can put forward to be the commander in chief of the greatest country in the world? These are our candidates. Like at the federal,
the system is broken. That's what it proves.
Yeah, it does.
I mean,
it's been that way for a long time, sadly, and that's the thing that gives me hope, man. My career is in financial planning. Like, I'm one of those nerds who spends his time in a spreadsheet running calcs, like analyzing data. That's what I did my whole career. So I look at this, running as a third party at a state level race for governor. It's only been successfully done one time before in history, and it was done by an independent, right? It was Jesse Ventura, and he had both celebrity and a huge pocketbook to back it up, right? He's the only person to challenge an R&D at this level. So I know the odds are stacked against me.
Wow.
But when I debated, the number 2 Republican and number 2 Democrat, right? And, these are not, nobodies, right? The number 2 Republican is the sitting state treasurer. Okay. And the number 2 Democrat was the recently retired, as in last year, state Supreme Court justice. So these are two people who have a career in government, right? Like these are the people. And here it's another party, the Forward Party, which is not ideologically aligned 100% with libertarians. They invited us all there, as well as the Green Party, and they did a straw poll at the end, and the people picked me.
Really?
And I mean,
is that debate recorded?
Yeah, it's all recorded, man. It's on the Forward Party of North Carolina's website.
I love to watch that.
And I stuck to libertarian principles, and I talked about, look, here's the, they want to bring up all the hot button issues, the drug war, public safety, immigration, all these things. And, you present a radically simple libertarian argument for some of these things that I just don't think that Republicans and Democrats, when they're going through like debate coaching or how to present their ideas in public, I don't think they even consider this. And when you put things in plain English and break them down with logic, like it really kind of backs Republicans and Democrats, especially those who are tied to like holding the party line and having to participate in their groupthink, as opposed to actually being able to say, look, I just want to look at this objectively. And maybe I don't have an opinion. Maybe I need some data and information to form the opinion. I feel like they're all so scared to say that. Where I'm always like, if I don't have enough information, I'll say, here's what I need to know in order to make form an opinion on this. But, you're asking me my opinion on something. I'm not going to just toe the party line. I'm going to think through it rationally, and I'm going to think through how's this going to impact everybody in my state, right? Like whether it's the business class or the poor, right? You got to think of everybody and how it's going to impact that, or you're going to ultimately make decisions that are not going to help the people. So I love that you say that, because that's something that RFK Jr. has sort of brought out. I've heard him say that in interviews, and the interviewers sort of like shocked. They're like, what do you mean? So just answer the question. And he's like, wait, back up a little bit. Do you see RFK Jr. as sort of breaking the glass ceiling of the third party candidate a little bit? Because he has made incredible strides in terms of popularity. Is someone like him going to help someone like you in the long run, just in terms of like, getting in the race?
Or is he another Ross Perot that will soon be forgotten?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of thought on these, and I'll give you kind of a couple of different thoughts on it, right? So you guys are obviously very familiar with RFK, so for a while he was courting the Libertarian nomination for president, right? I was in the camp that I was firmly against that, right? And that was a rather interesting exercise to think through, right? Because I'm a libertarian and I want our libertarian presidential candidate, but I had to look at this through the lens of like, I'm a statewide gubernatorial candidate. Like if RFK was the libertarian nominee, that would help me immensely in my race, right? Like there's no question if he was a libertarian, me as a gubernatorial candidate, that would be a headwind, right? Without question. But even still, I was against it because there's a couple of positions that he has that are just like so unlibertarian that I just, yeah. But overall, I mean, at the end of the day, he's no bullshit. He's going to tell the truth. At least, you know, it seems so more than Trump or Biden will. I'll give it that. You know, he seems to be outside of the system. And honestly, if both the Republican and the Democrat Party are against somebody, I'm probably for them, at least somewhat. Like if both parties are against this person, to me, that seems to at least in theory offer the idea that they are a threat to the system. And I think that that's what we need as people. Like we've got such an overreaching government. We're almost $35 trillion in debt. Our great grandkids are going to be paying for the BS that we're spending now. And like, we're not even spending it on stuff that benefits the people here. It's not like we have like nice new roads and bridges. We have like all our infrastructure crumbling, but hey, let's send another $100 billion overseas, right? Because you know, our people who are struggling, screw them, right? That seems to be the message that we're getting from the Uniparty in DC, and I just think it's wrong. So,
and I feel like that we're not getting a clear explanation or justification from the federal government for why we're spending the money. It's all buzzwords and quick little speeches about it. So people are furious, about this overseas war spending.
That's the headwind, man. Because when you look at that, when you have people who are pissed off, and I mean, how do you not be pissed off, right? When you're in a situation where your rent's going up,
at least
groceries are going.
Explanation, yeah.
But that's how confident they are in the structure of their power that they can look at us, the people who are funding all of this, and say, you know what? We don't really care. We've got an R or a D next to our name, and we can do whatever the hell we want. And to me, this is something that I've had a lot of like philosophical thought about, of like, how do you fix this? Like how do you fix this? And I get a lot of people who say, well, 1776. And to me, that's not an option for me. Like I'm not a pacifist. I'm not a pacifist, but I'm not a revolutionary. And I'm not going to, I'm a libertarian. I believe in the non-aggression principle. But I do believe that the power of the people can be restored if we lean into the founding of this country.
And we've seen examples documents. Of it. You're right.
Like if you just read, and the most powerful thing is when you present them to someone together, right? When you put these two things together, first give them the Declaration of Independence, okay? Then hand them the Constitution and point them to the 10th Amendment. Those two things right there, the Declaration of Independence and the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, in my opinion, provide what I think is the most viable path for the people of the United States of America to actually claw back the power of the federal government. When you can get, the dream situation is a state level, right? If the people of North Carolina, if about 2.4 million people check a box next to my name, I got 4 years to do this, and I will be the biggest damn fighter against the federal government in history. I won't be surprised if they kill me, because, I mean, you look at history, it's not like they haven't done that before. But I think that even if they kill me, that actually lends more momentum to the movement. As crazy as that sounds, but that's
what it takes.
Well, and if that can inspire, right, where you look at what the 10th Amendment says, is it outlines the power of nullification, right? It says if the Constitution doesn't expressly give the power to do something to the federal government, that power belongs to the states, or more specifically, the people. So in my vision of how you actually fight back, right, is you have local elections, a small municipality, a little town of 5,000 people, right? Take over that town board and do that in 1,000 towns across this country, right? Every state, you take over small counties. Yeah. And then what you do is you just have those towns say, you know what, under the 10th Amendment, we are declaring this null and void. We will not enforce it. We're going to tell our local law enforcement to ignore it. We're going to tell all of our local agencies not to cooperate. And you push back and you test those powers, because if a single municipality does it, the federal government with their lawyers and agents will come crashing down. But if 1,000 of them do it at once, there's nothing the federal government can do. Nothing. And that's a decentralized, peaceful revolution.
Would you call it like hyper local politics? I don't know, because you'd have to activate super quickly.
Yeah, I mean, so realistically, how it would work, right? This is a process where even as a fast thing, I mean, you're talking it's a decade plus movement, right? Where you have to look at starting, you have to find out first. You have to get the one, right? That first local board takeover, so to speak, where you're like, we're going to govern for our people, and then let that grow. And once you have 1,000 of them, that's when you coordinate. Where you have all of these. Hey, I'm the mayor of such and such Podunk Town, Iowa, and I'm the mayor of Podunk, Oklahoma. And once you have all of these little towns coordinating, and you say, hey guys, you know that thing that said the federal government can spy on Americans without a warrant? Yeah, we think that's bullshit. What about you guys? You guys think it's bullshit too? How about we just tell all of our law enforcement we're not going to work with any of these federal agencies as long as they're spying on Americans?
Yeah, man, that's what happened.
What are they going to do? I mean, at that point, those 1,000 counties have reestablished the true American. You're back to functioning as the Constitution, as the law of the land, because the federal government doesn't even care about it anymore.
Yeah,
they'll run right over it.
The opposite of that would be like what happened. I think it was New Hampshire and Vermont, but like what happened with the speed limits there. Like those states had speed limits above 90 miles an hour. Some states no speed limits, but then the federal government said, "Hey, we're not going to give you any money to like work on your state or your state any federally funded roads or bridges or train tracks." So they're like, "Oh shit, we got to put a speed limit in now." So you're talking about the opposite of that, I think.
So check this out, right? Because that's the viable threat, right? That's the one thing the federal government can do is we're going to cut off your funding. Now, if one town tried to do this, there's no question that immediately they would be surrounded by federal troops. But what would happen if 1,000 counties all of a sudden said, okay, you're going to take away our funding. We're banning the IRS from entering our county.
Yeah, you're going to burn
everybody in our county. Yeah. The government doesn't want to fund your roads. We're going to block the IRS. You fund your roads.
Can you legally block the IRS? Is that by a county?
Yeah, I mean, if there's enough people behind it, you can do anything. And we've seen examples of this, the power of large groups of people who decide. I mean, think about the financial boycotts that we've seen, where billion-dollar companies have absolutely crashed in a week. Yeah. I mean, with social media, people can organize. And I fucking love this vision that you have, because that is the answer to peaceful revolution.
It's the most viable way that I can think of, and I've put
100%.
Many hours into thinking about it.
It's an uprising. 100%. It's a peaceful uprising. It's an intifada, whatever they say.
It's beautiful.
Arabic, yeah. It can be peaceful or violent, but there's a peaceful way to do it. It's awesome. Yeah.
The thing is there's a lot of resistance, right? Like I looked at it at the local level because, when I was just kind of thinking through this, I had my buddy run for my local town council, and I live in a little town that is quite frankly like ripe for this kind of political action, right? I think we have 5,000 people or 6,000 people, and there's maybe 1,000 votes in the election, right? That's the kind of thing that if you knock on the door and talk to all your neighbors, you got a real shot. Right. And once we started doing this, and he just did it as an independent, right? Outside of anything, no, he's unaffiliated, not with any party, just ran and said, I'm going to kind of put forward things like on our neighborhood, right? Like end the corporate welfare and fix the damn roads, like just common sense stuff that are, like don't subsidize a bar when we have like for-profit bars that are not subsidized competing with like all these little things that small towns do. And the local GOP turned out at a level that, I've been here 20 something years. I have never seen them turn out. We scared them so much by just having one candidate do a little bit. So they're going to resist it. Like they're going to resist it. But and I say you, but like if we as a society can somehow start a movement that coordinates it, and really ramps this up and lays the groundwork now for where we are in 2034, right? Like, and really plan that out. you can potentially get to that point where you have enough steam that municipalities can essentially tell the federal government, piss off. We want nothing to do with you. And once that happens and you have those 1,000 municipalities, think about what happens to all of the places around those, right? Where this local municipality is like, hey, we're going to get rid of all this regulation. So businesses are thriving. People are thriving.
Gives them some courage. Yeah.
Hopefully we have a liberty cancer that spreads across this country at that point. So
do you have a roadmap or a general, an idealistic vision of how to spread this? Do you have any people who share this idea or vision?
So a lot of this is not original idea, right? Like a lot, at least my original idea, right? Like this is something that kind of comes from, I'm a student of politics history. I love to read those things, and a lot of this is based off of the ideas that the
change happens. Yeah.
The Mises Caucus put together a document called Project Decentralized Revolution, right? And I think that this vision is very much in line with that idea. Right. Because that I truly think, and that's what they called it. And I think that, I kind of took that and kind of put my own flavor and thoughts and expand upon it. But I just find that to be the most viable way for us to actually accomplish real political change. Like real, not we change from Trump to Biden or Biden to Trump or change from, this jerk that's going to spend $50 billion over the sea to some slightly less of an asshole who's only going to send 40 billion, right? Like I'm talking real systemic change. It's going to take a lot of effort and movement, but the thing is, people are waking up and listening and are open to these ideas more so than ever. And I think that that the Uniparty has no one to blame but themselves. Because they're taking the mask off. For so long, they've lied to the American people and divided us into these two camps where it's like, you're team red or you're team blue. The enemy is the supporter of team red or team blue. And they divide us with our neighbors, right? Where it's like you have this hyper partisanship when the reality is, dude, your neighbor's not doing shit to you. Sorry, I assume since you said it, I can say whatever. No, but your neighbor's not the problem. These assholes in power that are stealing our money, spending it on bullshit, those are the problems. But as long as they can keep you mad at your neighbor, and the biggest thing was when they renewed that FISA warrant, right? When they renewed FISA warrants in the House, to me, that was the biggest showing of the Uniparty ever that we have documented, right? We had 212 to 212 bipartisan opposition, bipartisan support, and the Speaker of the House, the Republican Mike Johnson from the Freedom Caucus, was the deciding vote that caused it to decline, and we were not able to say that you need a warrant to spy on Americans. That's crazy. The Uniparty. You were exposing yourself right there.
The fact that Julian Assange is not pardoned or Snowden is nuts too. Like,
dude, what about Ross Ulbricht, man? He made a website. He made a website, dude, and he's spending his life
the Silk Road guy, or is that the Silk Road guy?
Yeah, it's the Silk Road guy.
And ever since the Patriot Act, you can see how little congressions 10 years ago can transform and be abused 10, 20 years later. And that's why any power given, even if it's really small, you have to think long term.
Yeah.
You have to think really long term. Be like, this little inch is going to manifest into literally a totally different monster. So I don't know.
The only way you can make it so that corporations and special interests can't buy politicians, the only way, because forget the fact that we've kind of legalized it, but the only way you can do that is make it so that politicians don't have any power that corporations or special interests would want to buy. If you take away their power, so there's no financial incentive, that's how you get money out of politics. But as long as politicians have the ability to put their thumb on these scales, whether it's economic, cultural, on anything, if the government can use the power of force and the monopoly on violence to force something through, there will be some bad actor out there who will pay for that. However, if you take away that power or you hyper-localize it it's a lot harder to bribe 15,000 politicians than it is to bribe one. You know, like that's the reality. And if you take that power away and you claw it back and you first push it to the states, then push it to the counties, then push it all the way, like as far down as we can possibly get away with pushing the power, you know, you really don't have to worry about corporations. You don't have to worry about your neighbors. You don't have to worry about anything. Like all you have to worry about is your community, your local situation. And, you know, at that point, if the president's doing something really dumb, maybe it matters that we have to change him. You know, hopefully we can at least get to a situation where, you know, look at 2023. We spent $6.2 trillion at the federal government level. That amounts to almost $17 billion a day that they spend in this. $17 billion a day. And I mean, I don't know if you either of you guys have kids? No? Okay. Like as a parent, that shit like is evil to me. Right here, I have a 12-year-old who I'm trying to raise into being a good human, trying to like teach him to succeed and have skills and all these things. To think that he's, you know, I'm hoping that I can equip him to become a taxpayer, right? That he will make the income level that he becomes a taxpayer. Dude, it's $250,000 in debt per taxpayer right now. My son, who's 12, assuming he can, you know, make enough money to actually pay federal income tax, he's $250,000 in debt at 12 years old. How is that fair? How is that moral? How is that in any way even remotely okay? And we have an entire Congress and quite frankly, probably the vast majority of the population that either doesn't know, doesn't care, or doesn't understand the implications of it.
It's almost as if they're betting that the whole financial system is going to crash, and it doesn't matter what they spend right now because it's going to crash anyway. That's the vibe that I'm getting.
So you Bitcoin.
Well, yeah, I'm a big Bitcoin fan. So I was a professional investment advisor before I shut down my firm on March 30th. But I've been professionally recommending Bitcoin to clients for years, even though most people in my industry don't. Probably because I'm a libertarian and I understand what Bitcoin is. But I see the Wallstreet bitch.
What's your thoughts on the dollar?
On the dollar?
Or just generally on the last 5 years, the next 10 years, like the amount of money we're printing and the massive bubble we're in. Like, is there a way out of it? Or
yeah, that's that's a fun and deep question. So, but technically, as of March 31st, I'm no longer regulated by any government agency as far as what I say with regards to financial matters. So I'm going to just tell you guys the truth that they'd probably get mad at me for saying when I was licensed, right? At least in my mind, and I view things very libertarian, and I'm probably a little obsessive about some things, but I would argue that there is a strong case that the United States has been bankrupt since 1971, and literally everything that has happened financially since then is nothing but bullshit in a house of cards.
Is that when we went off the gold?
It is.
Reserve?
Right, it is. I mean, just look at it this way, right? Me and you are two parties, and you come over to me and say, Mike, I need a gold coin to go do this thing, but I'll tell you what, you're a good dude. If you give me this gold coin, I'll give you 2 gold coins back in 2 years. And I say, okay, hey, great. So then I come to you 2 years later and I say, hey, Wallstreet bitch, remember that gold coin I gave you? You told me you were going to give me 2 gold coins. I'd like my 2 coins. And if you said to me, Mike, here's a piece of paper that says that it's supposedly 2 gold coins, but I don't actually have any gold. Like, is that not a default? Did you not default on our agreement? Now, if
the U.S. is broke since 1971, then the whole world is, right? And what does that even mean, though?
Well, I mean,
we all owe each other money.
Yeah, I mean, well, when you look at the substance of the debt, because that brings to part 2. So that's my first argument, which is like the pessimistic, hey, we're actually broke. And I think that at least from a pure monetary standpoint is 100% true, right? In that scenario, if France had, hey, we loaned you $1 billion worth of gold, and we responded, hey, we're not going to give you $1 billion worth of gold. We're going to give you $1 billion of our fiat, but we won't drop nukes on you if you say yes, right? Like that's kind of our arrangement in 1971. that brings us to the how do we come out of it? And this is something I've been screaming about since like 20 years ago, right? Like 20 years ago when I at the time, I think I tended to vote Republican because at least Republicans were saying they were for limited government and, saying some things, and they just don't do it. But back then, the math on how to fix it was a lot easier, right? Like doing the math to make a budgetary surplus and paying off the debt, like the math worked. The math really doesn't work anymore right now. And there's a few things that could maybe make it work, right? Like the biggest holder of our debt is actually us. Like the largest holder of US debt is the US government. So, part of it is like, well, if you owe it to yourself, is it even real in the first place, right? So, I mean, part of it maybe can be, dealt with through accounting magic.
And isn't it a positive if another country, like let's say China, we owe a lot of debt to China, then in some sense they're invested in our success because they want their money back. Isn't that an aspect of this? Like if we fail, then China is fucked out of their money, so they want us to at least get by.
That's the idea and the incentive to keep the house of cards in a vacuum, for sure.
Okay,
but I mean, it's still a house of cards, right? And I think we're seeing it more and more with recent activity. Like the Fed would love nothing more. The Biden administration would love nothing more than to drop rates right now to 3%, right? Like to just drop rates back to 3% so people can buy houses. So
then
they would love nothing more.
Yeah.
But if they did that, the entire economy would collapse. That's why they don't do that. It's why you don't just play around with monetary policy. And that's where, I think a lot of libertarians have said it ever since Ron Paul was big on it, right? End the Fed, right? Like I think a lot of libertarians are pretty unanimous on end the Fed. I think that's obviously a good solution, but ending the Fed like right away, I mean, any real radical change is going to have a painful transition. It's silly to think it wouldn't. I think if you have a transition where you just tell the Fed, hey, we're not going to end you yet. You want to keep this fiat experiment going. I think the first thing that they should do is, we're not going to end you, but we're going to stop you from printing money. Period. You are not allowed to counterfeit dollars anymore. You're removing the power. And if you just gave them a single mandate rather than trying to control interest rates, control all these things, you say your single mandate is to maintain stability of the dollar towards a specific basket of commodities, right? Whether it's oil, hog futures, whatever. You design this. And again, as a libertarian, I hate it because it's central planning, but we're central planning now, right? So let's at least central planning in a way that tears some of this this down. But I think if you could get the Fed to a point where they're not printing money, where they're not controlling interest rates, and they're focusing on maintaining the stability of the dollar, I think that's a good first step. And then the other thing is you just have to make the math work. And people are scared of it because it's austerity. And apparently in politics, that's a word that instantly means you don't get elected.
But what would the consequences be, let's say, if we made the right choices 5 years out? Would we go through an insane Great Depression? And is something like that necessary in order for us to level out? And what does that even look like? Like, does that mean mass homelessness, or is there a smoother way out of this? Everyone's going camping.
It depends, dude. So I mean, I have to look at this through multiple lenses. So I don't know. I didn't know too much about this podcast. I just said, I'm just going to hop on. I'm a candidate, so I'm going to talk to anybody over anything, and I'm just going to reach out. But my start in politics actually came with homelessness being a center of it, right? So I got really outraged locally when my local government went to a local church, and this church every single day gives out lunch and dinner to about 100 to 200 homeless people in the area, right? Every single day they make meals, hand them out. And it's January of 2021. And the pastor of the church basically has a bunch of land, and he tells the homeless people, hey, you could set up your tent on, in the woods behind our church, right? On private property, so that the cops won't come harass you and burn your shit and do all of this. So the local city sent him a letter that says you are a church and should operate as such. You are not a shelter, which to me, I would argue, like, dude, if this is a church, I feel like that's a pretty clear First Amendment thing where they could say, look, my book literally tells me this is what I'm supposed to do. Feed, shelter,
church is supposed to give shelter. Yeah,
right. Like this is, I'm literally doing exactly what the church is supposed to do. But we had this big fight because when it was 19 degrees outside, he basically opened up kind of the bottom layer, like the basement where they have a fellowship hall, and said, hey, bring your sleeping bags in, sleep inside. It's 19 freaking degrees outside. So when it comes to homelessness, and I see like the government's actively doing things to make that problem worse, whether it's creating situations where you have people who are now in a situation where they have no means and they're homeless there.
Yeah.
At least if you do away with all of that stuff, hopefully all of that stops. So at least private charity can go about it unrestricted and not be afraid. I mean, no joke, this pastor had, I think, almost $70,000 in fines that they racked up and were threatening to take his church if he didn't shut down the encampment.
Interesting. I love to hear that you sort of started in the homelessness issue, because that's a complicated issue, and like I'd love to hear your view of like how California is handling it, because they're spending millions and millions of dollars and there's no results.
Yeah.
Versus sort of what you just told, your local community having a support at the small community level. Is that sort of how you view this, the solution to this sort of small communities coming together and helping smaller amounts of people?
Yeah. So in the long run, right? And this is something that, my campaign team probably going to get mad at me for, but whatever. You guys are based in Colorado, not primarily a North Carolina audience, right? But, at the end of the day, Javier Milei is the president of Argentina. Ideologically, Javier Milei and I are the South. We both are very much subscribers, to the Murray Rothbard school of thought, right? Anarcho-capitalism. And that's, kind of a no-no word and a scary word because it has the word anarchy tied to it, right? And that's very much, sadly, most people confuse anarchy and chaos, and they're not the same thing. In many cases, what the public calls anarchy is actually chaos. And I'm not pro chaos, right? So when I think through that, my guiding principle is the non-aggression principle. And if we had a government that stuck to that basic thing, right? What are the core values that really are needed for a society to cohesively coexist with human beings who all have different individual wants, desires, beliefs, preferences? How do you get 350 million of them into this geographical group of land and have them live peacefully? To me, the non-aggression principle is all the rules you need. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. Like that basic morality. So when I look at homelessness and whatnot, there's some very valid concerns, right? Like I've worked very actively in the local homeless needs community, right? And I can tell you that there's some people there that are homeless because they want to be homeless, because they are addicted to drugs, and that's the lifestyle that they want. But I have also met people who really fell on shitty situations, right? I had this lady who was special needs, and she was in her 70s, and she lived with her son, and her son died. So now you have a special needs 70-year-old lady living on the streets, no means to make money, no means to do anything. Like, should we as a society do something about that? I don't think we should with tax dollars, but if any church, secular organization, community, like if people want to help that person, they should be able to help that person with zero resistance from the government. The government should stay the hell away from it and let them help, not make it worse. The problem is the government stops that from happening. I think the way the government tries to solve it incentivizes the bad situation, because local charities, right? If you have a local ministry that's like, hey, we're going to take people in, they can set their local rules, right? Hey, if you want to come stay here where we're letting people set up tents and you're safe from the police and say, if you want to do that, you have to live by our rules. And each private place can set their own rules. Like some place could be like, hey, we're okay with weed, but you can't smoke crack. Hey, we don't want to have you doing anything. Or, hey, we're a free for. Let those individual places choose what works best for them, what they're able to manage, and let them reallocate those resources. Because the way the federal government does it is not helping people. It's just not, at least not on the ground, or maybe it's different other places. But from what I see, they're actively making things worse by incentivizing bad behavior. And at the federal level, I argue that the war on homelessness only creates more homelessness, because the way they structure federal and state dollars, they have all these municipalities doing what they call a pit count, which is a point in time count where they go around and they count all the homeless people. And they're like, hey, we've got 200 homeless people. We've got 500 homeless people. And then they go to the federal government and they say, hey, we have this many people. And each person accounts to dollars coming back to that municipality to spend on the problem. Well, if you really understand economics, and I think as Bitcoin guys, you understand, well, what's the incentive to the government? Well, the government's like, hey, if we have more homeless people, we get more money.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole system is broken. And if the only way to break that is to actually put it in the hands of people who take on risk, like as Bitcoin guys, right? If you buy a crypto, I'm a big Bitcoin purist, but I know Shannon loves all his shit coins. But if you're going to buy a crypto, you're taking the risk. If it goes to shit, you're the one who loses out. The problem with federal dollars is the upside is in many cases, privatized to the special interests, and all of the losses are subsidized by the taxpayer. If you take that out, and anybody who's saying, hey, I want to make a difference with homelessness, they now have risk. If they do a good job and they take care of homeless, more people will donate. But if they go out there and they do something shitty and make the problem worse, people aren't going to donate. They're going to fold. You at least create a system where risk is now being bared by the people who are trying to solve the problem, which will at least incentivize coming up with economically viable and quite frankly, viable solutions. Because if you're incentivizing, hey, we'll give you dollars based on having more homeless people, what politician's like, hey, we need more money. If we have more homeless people, we get more.
Our governor Jared Polis and the new mayor Mike Johnston have been busting in like thousands and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of immigrants from Venezuela, and so now they're all like standing on the street in the cold with nowhere to live.
Thousands of more homeless people
with nowhere to live, and I feel terrible for all these people with what's going on in their country. But it's like, okay, can they get a license so they can get a fucking job? No, because the government makes that hard. Can they get housing? No, because some big housing contractor needs to come in, like BlackRock, to build affordable housing, and then the immigrants can live there through some state-funded program, and then they'll vote Democrat again. And so Denver's kind of not as good as it probably was last time you were here.
So I mean, if you go back,
I do like Boulder a little bit more. I probably,
Yeah. I love Boulder.
If you go back to your example of the church, what was the reason that they shut that down? And going back to what you're saying about how the federal government handles homelessness, like how are they actually handling it? Like instead of having local communities support these people, what's going on now?
Yeah, I mean the current status quo, right? So motivations are tough. Right? Like motivations, knowing what's in the hearts and minds of the people making the decision. All I can do is make a logical case, follow the logic, follow the money, and make a speculative opinion, which I think the root of it I hit on, right? Is
you're saying you don't know their intention, but you can make some assumptions.
I can tell you the mechanism that they used, right? So here's the mechanism that they used to rack up $70,000 in fines on this pastor. So while this was all going on, and we knew that there was a need.
$70,000.
$70,000
for one church.
For one church,
insane.
Right? And thankfully we went to court. We got it before a judge, and basically how it all ended was, basically he complied with all of the government's demands, did exactly what the government did, and in exchange for basically bowing down and kissing the ring, they agreed to just ignore the charges and ignore all of that money as long as you stay on your knees and keep kissing the ring, right? So that's how it ended. But how the mechanism that they used to do it, right, is he was basically the only essentially truly compassionate shelter, right? Like you had the Salvation Army, which has a no drug policy, and he took the approach, as a pastor, he said, I'll let anybody here, but I want to offer substance abuse counseling. I want to offer mental health treatment. I want to, hey, if you're here, I don't care that you're on drugs, just like don't bring it into the church, keep it in your tent kind of thing. And if you're here on the property, you got to come either to church or to counseling or something there. And to me, I want like 1,000 people trying to do that. Like, I don't think that I can centrally plan the right homeless policy for every city here. But what I do know is that people in those communities, if the government wasn't assessing them with $70,000 fines for trying to fix the problem, they'd probably be able to come up with something, right? But every time someone even tries, the government is like, if people complain, like I'm sure you guys know, people call the cops over dumb shit all the time. You see somebody that you don't like to look, oh, hey, this is this weird guy walking down the street. Like, people call the cops over dumb shit. So they're like, oh, we got 1,000 calls, some of them drug related, some of them whatever. But they basically are like, you're a public nuisance. So because you're a nuisance, and they used essentially nuisance laws and zoning laws. So one of the things that we needed is he needed space as the encampment was growing. So I got together with Spike Cohen, who is the founder of Year of the Power. He was the 2020 Libertarian vice presidential candidate. And we got together and we raised money to transport 2 donated construction tech trailers, right? So a construction company that has these big trailers says, we'll donate these that you can convert into like a substance abuse center where you can have like an office and treat people. And, it basically amounted to 4,000 square feet of space. So they were donated. We raised $7,000 to arrange for the transport about 100 miles from the construction company to the church, and had them set up. And they basically said, since we weren't zoned and approved to do this, and the way we did it is we basically said in public, in public expression during a city council meeting, we told them we were going to do this, that there's a need for space. Yeah. You're complaining about people being out in tents. We're going to bring space. We told them there, but because we didn't go through that, they're like, you didn't get the zoning. So they racked up something like a $250 a day charge per trailer. There were 2 trailers, and they waited, I think, 4 months to actually tell us that they were fining. So they just all at once said, here's $500 a day for 4 months. Oh, and by the way, it's still racking up at $500 a day. Oh, and then here's some nuisance violations too, since there was a picture of trash that are, a pile of trash that our drone picked up that you guys hadn't gotten to cleaning when we took the pic. Like, they just weaponized all of that shit.
No, yeah, that seems like total bullshit. But I mean, just to play devil's advocate, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Yellow Deli. It's like they're like these 24-hour delis across the country, and they're run by like
a cult.
Yeah, they're like similar to like Amish. I don't know if they're a cult, but they're like
they are a cult.
They like are I don't know. Yeah, they like don't.
Dude,
really
they're
like,
100%.
They don't really let their women speak. They like
100% a cult.
They run these 24-hour like coffee shop sandwich places. But they have this big plot of land in southeast Boulder, and I think it was 2020, maybe 2019 or 20. There was this thing called the Marshall Fire, and it was between Boulder and Denver off Highway 36 in Colorado, and burned down a bunch of houses because they had like unpermitted shed with some sort of weird electric system in it that then started a fire that burned down all of these houses. So like, that's my crux with government regulation around those stupid bullshit things. Because when something like that happens and people are losing their homes because some idiot did really bad electrical work, how do you balance all that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, specific.
I think even in that specific case, right? I think even in that specific case, let's think through like, first, I guess, the moral side of it, and then like the reality side of it, right? Because I think the moral side of it's pretty straightforward. If that happened, if it's your property and you screw something up and do something negligent and it causes damage to and harms someone else, like the property owner who caused that's who should be financially responsible for it, right? And they should have to, either through insurance or their own bank account or going out there and doing the labor themselves, they should make it right. I think that's how, like, we as individuals, like, I was over at my buddy's house and I, knocked over a bobblehead, and it was like a rare bobblehead. I broke it, so I bought him a new one. Like, that's just, that's the way you should do it. Now, I think that in that situation, whoever harms another person, whether you're harming their person or their property, that's who should ultimately be held responsible. And sadly, I think, while that's the idea of what the government and the court system is supposed to do, right? Like the court system should be there. If you do something that harms me financially, right? Like fraud, whatever it may be, I should have my day in court, be able to bring charges against you. And the government hopefully should bring about justice. At least that's what we're all taught in grade school and led to believe. But sadly, when you really look at the idea of like economic justice and holding harm doers accountable, in many cases, the government is the single person protecting the harm doers. It's not necessarily in those cases, because some of the regulatory environments at the individual level, like insurance and personal lawsuits, can settle that. But take a look at when bigger elements of harm are done, right? Like, since we're talking multiple states, I'm assuming you guys aren't just Colorado and not just North Carolina. But look what happened in like East Palestine, Ohio, right? When Norfolk Southern literally like dumped chemicals and spewed chemicals into the air. In any kind of just world, every person that they caused damage to who would be able to sue Norfolk Southern and get compensated just damages for that. Only the government can give large private corporations immunity. So sadly, in many cases, it's the government protecting the worst of those who do harm to society.
Joe Biden
cannot sue. They cannot sue.
Joe Biden did commute daily by train on that bridge.
Well, I mean,
on that bridge? No, he's talking about East Palestine.
Sorry,
but Norfolk Southern as a utility, they have immunity through that. I mean, look what happened with COVID. Right? All the COVID manufacturers have blanket immunity. We could find out in 10 years that, oh shit, the shot's causing damage to people. Too bad, so sad. They have blanket immunity from the government. No one can ever sue them over that. I mean, I don't think the government should be able to give anybody.
All RFK is saying too, that they shouldn't have blanket immunity. People say, oh, he's an anti-vaxxer. No, he's just saying that they shouldn't have blanket immunity. That's all.
Yeah, Flint, Michigan, I think a new documentary came out about that on YouTube, and like, it's been 10 years. It's been 10 years, and the water's still poisoned there. They have a higher crime rate among teens because they literally have.
Obama went there.
They literally have Mad Hatter syndrome because they all have lead poisoning. So there's all these ultra-violent teens being arrested because they were poisoned by the government.
It's fucking insane.
And the people who financially benefited from what led up to that are still rich as shit, never paid anything, and no one was ever held accountable.
Yeah, and that period of time or whatever where you can get away with it is passed now for that. I forget what that's called legally. But
statute of limitations.
Statute of limitations, they're good now,
So why is it? Is that because originally there was laws created to protect the 70-year-old disabled lady who, if she did something wrong, couldn't pay for herself? And that's why there's these laws to cover that type of shit. And people are taking advantage of them, or is it just a super corrupt system where these massive corporations are just covering their asses and saying, we don't give a fuck. We're just going to do all this shit and hope nothing goes wrong. And if it does, go fuck yourself. Like, are those, is that both morphed, or like, how do these laws even get passed in the first place? Like, how are they packaged?
So when we're talking federal law, okay, so we're talking federal law, which in many cases, like vaccine immunity, utility immunity, railroad immunity, those things are all done at the federal level. It comes down to what I find as Donald Trump's most egregious lie. Okay, when Donald Trump, and I'll say this openly as a libertarian in 2016, okay, I voted for Donald Trump in 2016 for the same reason that I would have voted for a communist in 2016 if they were pitching this one idea. Okay. And I am very much anti-communist, right? That idea of drain the swamp, okay? Draining the swamp, ending the corporate lobbying, ending that whole industry. And then he got in, surrounded himself by swamp creatures. But that one idea, that is the root cause of all of these problems. All of these immunities come back because some company who's like, oh shit, if we screw up, we could get caught for like $10 billion worth of risk if we screw up. But hey, if I donate to these 400 candidates $10,000 each and talk to them about how this risk to our business makes us unable to meet the needs of the public, but if we had immunity, we'd be able to better serve your constituents, and here's $10,000. Every single law that we're looking at has huge money and huge lobbyists behind it. And that's my problem. We get these multiple thousands of page omnibus spending bills. They're all written by these swampy lawyers who are lobbying. In many cases, it's the companies that are being regulated who pay money to regulate them in a specific way to either stomp out competition, protect their own risk, or outright impact direct cash payments from the government. That all needs to be torn down if we're going to have any chance of restoring real free markets to this country. Because I truly believe in free markets. Like, free markets are what made us the greatest country in the world. And sadly, we're abandoning them. And I would not be surprised if some other country becomes, the dominant powerhouse globally going forward.
Only abandoning them. Our whole economy is captured by these big corporations. I mean, you go into a Walmart and go into the cosmetics aisle, you have the illusion of 100 different options, yet every brand is owned by the same fucking company if you follow it up 10 rungs. And that's with every industry. That's with every single industry. And that's across the board. So we're living in this world where we think that we're living in a capitalist utopia. Yet it's like 3 companies that are just sucking our money up to the same people.
Yeah.
And
I mean, to be totally honest, in my early 20s, back in like 2008, 2014, I worked as a weed lobbyist in DC.
Nice.
Like lobbying for like weed companies and medical, recreational marijuana. And then I stopped because once the companies got so big, like the weed lobbyists became like these like corporate political entities trying to negotiate these really corrupt deals. Like,
weed lobbyists?
Yeah, like lobbying just to get weed legal. But then once it like started to become legal.
But look what the weed lobby's doing in Florida. Have you seen what the weed lobby's doing in Florida?
No, I stopped following it, to be totally honest.
Dude, so the weed lobby is attacking hemp in Florida to the point where Florida has now like criminalized hemp across the board.
Okay.
Now I get it, because anybody who's paying attention, like, and this is something that, I guess I'm going into those taboo subjects that we shouldn't really talk about as a political candidate.
Talk about hemp.
Thomas Jefferson and George Washington grew hemp, I'm pretty sure.
And hemp's one of the most industrious fucking materials that we can produce.
It's called weed for a reason.
But if you look at the science, people don't realize this. Donald Trump accidentally legalized weed across the United States in the 2018 Farm Bill. In the 2018 Farm Bill, he accidentally legalized weed across the United States.
He legalized the farming of hemp. He allowed farming, right?
Yes. So he legalized hemp.
This.
Yeah. So if you look here in North Carolina, right? So you guys are in Colorado, where you've had weed as a non-issue almost for a long time. Although I would argue it's an issue because it's ridiculous that they tax you guys 15-20% on it.
Still cheaper than what I used to pay.
Yeah, well,
it is. Right.
It did get changed to Schedule 3 drug, I think, actually, so that the businesses are still getting taxed.
So are you guys familiar with the legal definition of marijuana at the federal level?
No.
All right. So the legal
hemp, right?
The legal definition of marijuana, okay, is basically any product of the cannabis sativa family that contains a dry weight content of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol of 0.3% or more. Okay, so if it's over 0.3 on a dry weight basis, you take a bud. If it's 0.3 or more, it's illegal. If it's anything under 0.2, it's legal. Which, the reality, if you understand the science behind cannabis and growing that plant, is literally all weed that has ever existed up to a certain point, right? Like, so what companies have figured out is that they could grow all your favorite strains that you can buy anywhere it's medically or recreationally legal.
Is that what Delta-9 is?
That is, so Delta-9 is THC. Yes, Delta-9 is THC. But how the loophole that they found is the THCA loophole. That's how they're basically selling weed all across North Carolina and, quite frankly, all across the United States, is under this THCA loophole. So THCA is the natural direct precursor to THC, which happens naturally. So when you're growing weed, you cut the plant, you hang it upside down to dry, right? So, and the natural decarboxylation, so most cannabis, especially if it's like high grade shit, is somewhere in like the 25 to 35% THCA content. And as it cures, it naturally decarboxylate and usually comes in like the 1 to 2% THC, but it's still like 25 to 28% THCA. Now you light it on fire, all that THCA becomes THC. Okay, so that's decarboxylation, whether it's natural or whether you apply heat. So what these companies realized is if you cut the weed 2 weeks early, and when you hang it up to dry, you keep the room below 30% humidity and below 60 degrees, so low humidity and cool. They you know, with their marketing, they call it cryo curing. I've seen them call it their cryo curing, but it prevents natural decarboxylation. So you're ending up with a bud from the cannabis sativa plant that is 35% THCA, but 0.2% THC because they've naturally
What do they call it?
They call it THCA hemp flower. You can buy it all over online. Like you can buy it online, shipped to your door.
And it's just weed.
It's hemp and it's weed. It's just weed. Like they're going through all this obfuscation, and the way they did it was really quite brilliant.
What?
With the like, they did Delta 8 and
local...
HHC and all these other cannabinoids, and they try to present THCA like it's another one of these HHCs or THCPs or one of these other cannabinoids that they found. Dude, it's real. It's nothing
That's
more
wild.
than just straight up weed. That's been.
Yeah,
it's the difference between a green tomato and a red tomato. That's the only difference.
Is this affecting the legal marijuana business at all? Like, I feel like this would blow everything up.
It's not taxed.
That's why the marijuana lobby has Florida making hemp illegal. This is why, because they figured this out. They're like,
wow.
So they're using government to shut down competition. Like they're literally lobbying to weaponize to shut down competition. It's bullshit.
Which is like directly against everything that weed lovers should stand for. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy, guys. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, that reminds me.
I'm gonna go back and go over this. So Trump actually legalized weed across the whole nation because of this
loophole. The THCA loophole is what I call it.
That's
the
insane.
THCA loophole.
That's insane.
Do you think he knows that he did that?
No.
No way.
No way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was wondering when like Delta 9 came on the market in New Jersey, where my family lives. I was like, oh.
Yeah, so Delta 9 is just weed. Delta 9 is just THC.
Right, yeah. It gets so fucked up.
But because of the legal definition, the same way it applies to flour, right? Like that's the way they cryo cure flour to be able to sell buds to people legally, right? But the way the word is written, that's how they basically got edibles legal throughout the country, right? So they look at it and they're like, oh, you want a 10 milligram edible? How heavy do we have to make the gummy? Or how heavy do we have to make the chocolate so that the THC is under 0.3% by dry weight? So if you do that, you just, and if they ever change it and they're like, oh, you got to get to 0.1%. All you got to do is make the fucking gummy bigger. Same dosage of cannabis, bigger gummy. Now you've complied with the new law.
That's why it's so fascinating when you try to make a something like weed illegal. You have to define it. And how do you define it? Do you define it chemically, biologically? Like what? How do you define it? You know. Yeah. And this is an example of how it cannot be defined. Yeah, I love it. I love that.
They defined it wrong and accidentally legalized weed.
Yeah.
So exactly. You know, you got to think like me in North Carolina. I look at it and the thought of legalizing it. To me, I'm almost against legalizing at this point, right? Because I'd much rather fight for decriminalization because right now in the current situation, if they legalize it, what does that mean? It means they're going to tax it. So I'm going to pay more for it.
Yeah, and they
right
take
now
it over.
I just pay normal sales tax because it's just a hemp product.
Same with psilocybin. Honestly, I think it should be decriminalized, not legalized so that it's just taken over by pharmaceutical companies and literally destroyed.
How
way it is now.
Is it anyway though? Like weed, psilocybin. Like how arrogant is it of a human being to be like, you can't have this plant that was bought. You know, you can't have this plant that grows naturally. That was growing long before we existed and will be here long after we're gone as a species.
It's fucked. You're right. You're right.
It's ridiculous on its face. Yet 350 million people, we just accept it that it's normal. Oh, the government says you can't grow this plant.
Yeah, and it's because of the insane propaganda that the generations above us grew up with. Ridiculous. And it's trickled down into us. And it's just about fucking breaking out of that way of thinking, which can be applied to literally all of our belief systems. But still, you're right. I mean, how dare you mandate something about a natural biological thing that no one owns?
It's arrogant. It's really arrogant.
Exactly.
So I didn't do a ton of research on the podcast. I noticed you guys normally keep it around an hour. I don't have a set schedule, but any other topics you guys want to hit on?
We're ready to we can wrap up then too. We'd love to
unless
have
there's anything that you feel strongly about that you want to touch on. I sort of want to know who you're going to vote for.
And then just to give you some context for our podcast, we are everything sexy, and we consider you sexy, Mike Ross. But also we had
my wife does too, which is the most important thing.
That is good. But we had we're not gay either, unfortunately. That'd be a lot easier. But we had John McAfee on twice. He's probably our most famous guest.
Fucking hero, man.
Libertarians, and then our probably next most famous would be either this guy, Dr. Steve, who he has the longest running syndicated show on Sirius XM called Weird Medicine.
Oh wow.
He's a friend of the show, and then awesome. We have this guy who likes to drink his own urine that used to come on all the time, but we haven't heard from him in a while. So,
but is there anything else you'd like to touch on?
And the shaman. We have the shaman twice.
So I'm joining a long list of esteemed guests.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Can I make a final pitch to make my campaign team happy?
Yeah,
awesome.
We would love that.
Yes. Yeah, so to all the viewers of the Baptize Machine podcast, first off, thanks for listening. Thanks for giving these guys your attention. They've been wonderful hosts. But my name's Mike Ross. I'm a Libertarian candidate for governor in the state of North Carolina. If you've been listening to this or watching this and you like what you're hearing, I am really trying to actually do this as an independent and fight the government of North Carolina and fight this interstate and set apart a movement. And I've already beaten the number 2 Republican and number 2 Democrat in our state in a debate. And because of that, the local media has put a requirement on me to raise $1 million by June 30th if they want to get an invitation to the debate. My campaign only planned on spending $10,000 because we were trying to break the paradigm and follow the Javier Milei model. So if you are willing to donate to politics, please head over to firetheuniparty.com. Even $1 will help because they need at least 500 individuals and $1 million by June 30th. Anything you can do, if you like this message, if you want a no bullshit person taking it to the government, every little bit will help because the government is trying to shut me out, colluding with the local media and saying I need to raise $1 million, even though it's not my campaign plan. The only way I can do that is with your help. Firetheuniparty.com. Anything you can pitch in would be phenomenal and help me take this message and take a no bullshit approach. And quite frankly, scare the hell out of Mark Robinson and Josh Stein because they're not ready to talk to a normal person and who's going to put them on the spot and talk about things to matter to regular people in this country. Thank you so much. And guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, fuck Mark Robinson and Josh Stein. That's all I got to say.
We'll put your donation website in the description. We'll also tweet it out. And I'm going to donate because, dude, I believe in this.
Thanks, guys.
I really do.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, awesome
it's bullshit, dude. Four years ago, like Shannon told me when he was running for Senate, which is another statewide race, they told him that to participate in his debate, he only had to raise $50,000. Which, if I only had to raise $50,000, I would have crushed that out the gate. They literally 20 times it to shut me out of the debate because they know that neither Mark Robinson nor Josh Stein can sit on a stage and actually have to rationalize their positions against somebody who understands economics and understands society, how society works. So,
well, the people need to fucking rally right now.
We appreciate you coming on, Mike, and we'll help your cause as much as we can.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much. We'd love to talk again.
Keep in touch. I'm happy to this podcast circuit and talking to people. I'm always trying to reach people. So I'm always willing to come on and look. I'm just going to talk. I'm not a politician. Probably comes across. I've probably said some things that my team will be mad at me for saying, but look, I'm real. I am who I am.
No,
and if you're in North Carolina, please vote for me in November.
We will. I know actually a city planner, I think, in like Charlotte, so I'll let him know.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right, bye. Mike Ross, what a legend.
Dude, that guy was fucking awesome.
I don't know why he's teaming up with Shannon.
Yeah. Shannon drags him down a bit. No offense, Shannon, but Mike is a genius. Mike's a genius.
He's still married and has kids. You've been accused of domestic violence.
All right, we don't need to.
All right, well, anyway, thanks to our sponsors, Grand Daniel, or Pickle Walks for the music, Looney Raccoony, Happy Dose, thanks to the sweaters, Grandma's Pet Wipes.
Grandma's Pet Wipes?
That's
No,
fine.
a fresh Shep's liquor cabinet, mud water sponsors us.
Bananaless Cage.
Bananaless Cage.
The Libertarian Party of North Carolina now sponsors us.
Yes, but go to happydosco.com for. All right.
Well, just go to baptizemachine.com and we're going to be selling Happy Dose soon. They gave us a great deal, so I think we're going to start selling their shit.
Yeah.
And here's our outro song. It's called
Get the
Ohio.
drugs out of the
Oh,
car.
it's called Ohio.
Ohio.
By Grant
Why'd you pick
Daniels.
this song? I ask you that every time. I think Taco needs to, or Bernadette needs to share. Yeah, baby, dude, I feel like there's so many good clips from that. Seriously. And I sing to
You just make the clips too.
Dude, give me Riverside.
I'll log you into it right now. Well, I use that Opus clip.
Alright, just send me the full thing.
I've sent it to you 100 times.
No.
Just log you in.
This